You ever notice how the things you want most are usually the things that you're the best at talking yourself out of? And it might even start innocent enough. Let's say you want to reach out to someone. It could be romantic or it could be an old friend, it could be a job opportunity. It doesn't really matter. And you know what you want to say. You can feel it in your soul, but there's this little voice that shows up inside of your head that says maybe we wait until the timing is a little bit better. And that feels reasonable, right? It feels like it could be the smart thing to do, so you wait. But now you're thinking about how you're going to say it and when the time is right. So you start drafting it in your head, or maybe you whip out your notes app on your phone and you start rewriting it over and over again. He says, not from experience or anything like that. And each version feels like you're getting closer to the right words, except now you're looking at it so many times that you're not even sure what the right words are anymore because it doesn't even sound like you. So maybe you ask a friend, or maybe you don't ask anyone because that feels a little too vulnerable. So you just kind of sit with it. You tell yourself that you're being thoughtful and you're being careful and you don't want to come off too strong or anything like that. And you definitely don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable. You want to respect their space and all that. Again, sounds noble, doesn't it? Except, let me tell you from experience what's actually happening in this moment. You're not being thoughtful, you're stalling. And the reason you're stalling is because as long as you don't actually reach out, you'll never be rejected. So let's talk about the lie we tell ourselves when we're too afraid to try. Now the lie sounds a little different for everyone, but it does the same thing. It lets us avoid the actual risk while convincing ourselves that we're being responsible. Sometimes the lie is about timing. Oh, I'll reach out after the holidays. You know, they're probably really busy, or I'll just wait for things to calm down. I don't want to really bother them. And sure, timing matters, absolutely. But if we're being honest with ourselves, you're not waiting for the right moment. The right moment is right now. Instead, you're waiting for a moment where the rejection won't hurt you as much, which, hear me when I say this to you, does not exist. And sometimes the lie is about logistics. Maybe you don't live in the same city, so what's the point? It would be way too complicated, so why even bother? And yeah, maybe it would be complicated, but you're using that made up complication in your mind as some permission not to even try, not to even put yourself out there. And sometimes the lie is about them. You don't want to make them uncomfortable. They probably get messages like this all the time. You should respect their boundaries. And look, boundaries matter. Discomfort matters, but you're using their comfort as some defense mechanism for your own fear. You're pretending you're being considerate when really you're just protecting yourself from hearing no. You're solving problems that don't actually exist yet instead of finding out if there's something worth solving for. Let me say that again. You're solving problems that don't actually exist yet instead of finding out if there's something worth solving for. We tell ourselves we're being careful, that we're being thoughtful, that we're doing the mature thing by not rushing into it. And there's some truth to that. Sure, you don't want to be reckless, you don't want to be impulsive, you want to make smart decisions, except, is that what you're really doing? Because if you never reach out, if you never take the risk, if you stay in this place of maybe someday, you're not protecting a potential relationship or partnership or business deal. Those things don't need protecting. Instead, you're protecting this fantasy that you've made up in your head. You're choosing to live in a world where it could work out because that feels safer than living in the world where you tried and it didn't. And I get it. I really do. Please, please understand. I get it. The fantasy is comfortable. The fantasy lets you keep hoping. The fantasy doesn't require you to be vulnerable or face rejection or deal with the awkwardness of putting yourself out there and getting a no thanks, I'm good. But here's the thing about choosing the fantasy: you lose either way. If you reach out and they're not interested, sure, of course that hurts. That feeling is real. Being rejected never feels good, but at least you know, at least you tried, at least you gave yourself a chance. But if you never ever reach out, if you let that fear win, you still lose that person or opportunity or business. You still lose the possibility. You just lose it so much slower. And you lose it while lying to yourself about why. See, here's what I've learned about being stuck in this cycle. It feels productive. It feels like you're working on the problem. You're considering every single angle. You're being strategic. You're crafting some perfect approach. But really, you're just building some grand excuse for why you can't move forward. You, my friend, are mistaking motion for progress. I used to do this all the time. And the worst part is that the time you spend stuck in this cycle, all that energy that you spend convincing yourself that you're being careful, it doesn't actually change the outcome. The person or business or whatever you want to reach out to, they're either going to be interested or they're not. And no amount of perfect wording or ideal timing is going to change that. So, what you're really doing when you sit in this cycle is giving yourself this illusion of control in a situation where you have none. You can't control how they respond. You can't control whether they say yes or no. The only thing you can control is whether or not you try. And when you choose not to try, when you choose the lie over the leap of faith that you need, you're not protecting yourself from rejection. It's way worse than that. You are guaranteeing rejection. You're just making sure that the rejection comes from you instead of them. So here's the $20 million question. Do you actually want clarity with this decision, or do you just want to live in this black void of what if? Because you can't have both. Hope is what you get to keep as long as you never actually find out. But clarity is what you get when you're willing to take the risk. And I'm not going to tell you which one to choose. I'm not going to pretend like there's some right answer here, but I will say this. Hope has a shelf life, and at some point, maybe someday, stops feeling like a possibility and quickly becomes regret or resentment, he says, again, not from experience or anything like that. So if there's someone you've been meaning to reach out to, if there's something that you've been talking yourself out of, or some risk that you've been too terrified to actually take, maybe just send the message. Do it. Make the call. Take your shot. And no, not because it's guaranteed to work, not because rejection doesn't hurt, but because living with "I wonder what would have happened" hurts significantly more. Trust me. And you deserve better than spending the rest of your life wondering, what if? This has been Soul Searching. My name is Landon. See you next time.